Good morning and welcome to Introductory Logic Lesson 12. Today we are talking about standard categorical statements. Now if you watched the previous lesson, we talked about standard statements. And this is where we take a regular statement and we translate it into a standard statement. And to do that, we had to add a to be verb. So we took regular sentences, translated it, and made it a to be verb. But in order to do that, we also had to translate other words and make everything in the predicate a noun. If you missed that and you need to look at that, that would be lesson 11. So you can watch that there. But we're going to be kind of covering that again today. The categorical part of the statement is that it affirms or denies something about the subject. So this is what we're adding today in our lesson from what we looked at last lesson. And if you recall, a statement is any sentence that has a truth value. It can be true or false. It has a truth value. So a standard categorical statement is a sentence that we take and we translate and we put a to be verb in it. It affirms or denies something about the subject, and it has a truth value. Now, I've got all four categorical statements, standard categorical statements up here on the board. All S, this should probably be an R. All SRP, no SRP. And again, it just matters the subject, what the subject is. But it sounds better for right now if I make that an R. No SRP, some SRP, some S are not P. These are the only four kinds of categorical statements that every statement must be used in order to make a formal argument. And the reason for this is so you can properly distinguish the subject and the predicate. There's two classes in every statement. There's the subject class you're talking about, which has to be a noun, and the predicate class you're talking about, which also has to be a noun. So you have two classes of nouns, and they're different, and you're looking at the relationship between those two classes. And in order to do that, and to do it well and clearly and properly, you set it up in this way, so there's no question about what's being talked about. And as we translate, that'll make way more sense because it can get very confusing when you have just a sentence and you're trying to figure out what is being said, what's being said about it, and put it in this, translate it into this. So we'll look at that. I also want you to recognize that although this is a rectangle, for space purposes, this is an introduction to a reintroduction to the square of opposition, which will come soon at a later lesson. And I've gone ahead and just put it up. I've done it, this is the second time I've done it. A little early, but I think the more you can actually see it and the most bare bones you can see it, it makes it easier when you actually get to the square of opposition. So if you notice, there's one statement in each corner, and this will show relationship between them here in a little bit. All right, so we're going to first practice taking a sentence, kind of like we did in the last lesson, and translating it into standard categorical form. All right, so the first thing is, remember, we need to find the subject. The subject here is nobody. I'm going to use a different color here. All right, so we're going to find the subject, which is nobody, and we need to add a to be verb. So I'm going to write nobody, and we have to add a to be verb. So remember, the to be verb has to agree with the number of the subject, and it has to agree with the tense of the verb. Okay, so nobody is a singular noun, and washes is present tense. So I'm going to do is. Nobody is a. And then what we need to do is we need to change the predicate, has to be a noun. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the verb, and a lot of times, if you remember, a lot of times, not always, you can take the verb and add an ER to it. So I'm going to take washes and make it a washer. And then I cannot drop any words, so I'm going to go back and see what kind of washer. A dishwasher. Okay, nobody is a dishwasher. This is where we got to in the last lesson. So this will just be a standard statement. It has a to be verb there, but we have to get it into categorical statement. So the categorical statements, these are our only options here. So we're going to have to figure out which one this is talking about. So let's look. We've got a nobody. This is implying no one. It's a negative side. And so we're going to look up here and see which one of these looks like it could be the one we could use. Well, it's not all because it says no one or nobody. No is what we're going to use here. It's also some are not because it's saying nobody. And some are and some are not because it's saying nobody. So it's going to be this one here. So we're going to say no. Now we could just say no body, but that's not the best way to do this. So nobody is talking about a person. So I'm actually going to change the subject so it's more clear about what we're talking about to person. No person is a dishwasher. All right, so we just took a regular sentence and translated it into standard categorical statement. Now, if you recall, we talked about we're looking at two different classes, the subject class and the predicate class. So our subject is person. This is one category or a class we're looking at in relationship. And this would be the predicate class. So this is S and P. All right, you see that? How it looks when we put the S and the P up, it looks just like that one up here. So no S is P. And you can just not say that part when you're reading it. Okay, so this is how you would do that. Now, let's say that instead of nobody washes the dishes, let's say that it is, let me change this up here. Oop. Let's say it says someone. Oop. Someone washes the dishes. We're going to do the same thing here. So let's do someone. And again, as we said, we took the verb, add an ER because we can in this one, dish. All right, so someone is a dishwasher. Now we've got to get it into the categorical form. So which one of these statements, all SRP, no SRP, some SRP, some S are not P, would this one be? It's not saying some do not, so it wouldn't be the negative side, it's going to be this one. So it's going to be some, I'm just going to erase this. And I'm going to do the same thing and make it a person because this would be our subject class. We're talking about a person. And then this is our predicate class. We're talking about a dishwasher right there. And the reason why it would be easier to and more clear, especially in the previous one where it was no body, is if you think about it, if you were to keep body here instead of person, that doesn't clarify what we're actually talking about. Because a body can be like, like the physical body. And when I think of that, I think of like a dead one. So I don't know why I think of it like that, but so that's why if you make it a person, you want to make it more as clear as possible as to what the actual class is that you're talking about there. All right, so that is a practice. Let me see. Okay, so we're going to look at the different parts of the statements here. So as I said, it has a subject and a predicate. When we're looking at the statements, the S stands for the subject and the P stands for the predicate. But there's also two other things because we're moving into this part here where it talks about it affirms or denies. So the first one is going to be, we're going to look at quantity. So quantity is how much of the subject we're talking about. If it's talking about the entire extension, because remember the extension has to do with everything that's included in that term. If we're talking about the entire extension, it's going to be universal. All right, and if we're talking about just a part of the extension, it's going to be particular. All right, so looking at our statements here, which of these are going to include the entire extension? This says all. That is including the entire subject. This says no, that's excluding the entire subject. So these top ones up here are our universals, because this one includes the entire extension and this one excludes the entire extension. All right, now that's quantity. How much? Next we have quality. Okay, so this one is talking about a positive or a negative. So if it affirms, that would be a positive. And if it denies, it's negative. Oops, equals. Oh, look, it just made an equal. So this would be positive, and denies is negative. So looking at our statements up here, the ones that affirm something about the subject would be all SRP and some SRP. Getting all mixed up with my markers here. All right, so this one is going to be positive. No SRP and some S are not P is negative. Let me see if I have, okay. Negative. It denies something about the subject. So this affirms something about the subject, it's positive. These deny something about the subject, so it is negative. Oh, and I forgot to put particular down here. So if you notice, we have universal up here, so this is including or excluding everything in the extension. But down here it says some and some are not. So this would only be talking about part of the subject, so that one there is going to be particular. All right, so this is actually putting more information into the square of opposition, or my rectangle. Right here it looks like a rectangle, but we're starting to put up relationships. So the universal and particular, positive and negative, are parts of the square of opposition. So we're starting to put that information up here. All right, I'm going to pause this and get something else up on the board, and I'll be right back. All right, so we're going to talk about the rules for translating into standard categorical form. We briefly went over it, but now we have an itemized account of how we're going to translate statements into standard categorical form statements. So number one, the statement must begin with all, no, or some. Remember our 4 statements on that square. Number 2, the verb must be a verb of being. These are is, are, was, were, will be, etc. Number 3, both the subject and the predicate have to be a noun or a noun phrase. So if it's not, you have to turn it into one, and we looked at that in the other lesson. So here's an example when it's not. Again, we did talk about this, but here's another example if it's just an adjective. All honey is sticky. We would have to add a noun. So what we could do is add a to make it make sense, and add food. All honey is a sticky food. So our subject class would be honey, and our predicate class would be sticky food. We have two very clear nouns that we are looking at. All honey is a sticky, whoop, that's a P. Predicate. Subject, predicate. All right, I'm going to erase this, and then I'm going to get another example up real quick. All right, I have a sentence up here. Christians will not be condemned. This one is actually in your homework, and I wanted to go over this one because a lot of times what can happen is in the lesson, they give really basic sentences to practice with, obviously, so it's easier to see. But then it jumps to really hard sentences. And this is where I found, it's not only myself, but a lot of the kids in my class were getting very confused and frustrated with this because it went from such simple statements to the homework was really hard. And so, as I said in a lot in the previous two, that there are certain rules that you can do. For example, changing the verb, just adding an ER, and how it usually works, but not always. This is an example of when it does not work. And this is a little bit of a harder statement. So I wanted to throw this in here before we stop. All right, so Christians will not be condemned. So first what we're going to do is let's find our subject. What is the sentence actually talking about? Well, our subject is Christians. So I'm going to put this here. This is our subject. And where is our verb? The verb is condemned. So this is our verb, and we actually have some helping verbs here too. So I also want to point out this word here, not. So this is a negative word. So I'm going to go ahead and note it up here. That means negative, and that's going to help me when I translate into the categorical part. And so based on what we were kind of saying, just add the ER to the verb. We know that that won't work here because let's test it out. Let's say if we just say Christians will not be a condemner. It changes the meaning of the sentence. And the reason for that is the subject in this sentence is not doing the action. This is passive. This is a passive form of the verb where the subject receives the action. So we could not say condemner in this one because the Christian is not the condemner. It's receiving the verb here. So we have to look at this one differently. And so we're going to slow down a little bit and we're going to work through this one. Okay, so first things first, let's add a to be verb and add the noun to the predicate. So I'm going to rewrite this. So I'm just going to bring down my subject here. I'm going to look at this very closely so I can get all the steps one by one. Okay, Christians will not be condemned. All right, so far I have not changed anything. Christians will not be condemned. I'm just going to add a noun to the predicate here. People. So now, instead of making this where the Christians were doing it, it's still receiving the action. It's describing the type of person they are. So condemned is more like describing what type of person, a type of person. So condemned people. Now, if you notice, it's saying that will not be. So this negative word here tells us a lot of information as to which of our four categorical statements is going to be. So it's a negative. So if you remember, our negative side of the square of opposition was no SRP and some S are not P. So we know which side it's going to be, but we have to figure out, is it going to be no or some are not? So we have the quality, which is negative. We are looking for the quantity. So we're going to look at our subject and we're going to say, are we talking about the entire group of Christians or a part of the group of Christians? And we know that it's talking about all, the entire group there. So I'm gonna make no here. No Christians will be condemned people. And that is how we would turn this statement into a standard categorical statement. So I hope that helps a little bit. This is actually one of the easier, sometimes the easier out of the hard. So I wanted to look at that. But I hope this helps, and we'll see you again for a later video. Bye.